Today on the podcast, we're really focusing heavy on what to do to set yourself apart to win a listing. I mentioned in the beginning on how to find listings. We didn't have time to go into that, but we really talked a lot about how do we set ourselves apart from the initial phone call all the way up to the point of the presentation and what we talk about in the presentation, so that when you do the presentation, you're already so far ahead of your competition, it's a no-brainer. Welcome to this week's episode of the Whissel Way podcast. Kyle, right now, we've said this time and time again, and it fluctuates, but right now listings are key, right? With inventory being so low, with homes selling over ask and getting multiple offers, with open houses getting harder and harder to come by because there's so few listings, I want to talk about how do we find listings and how do we win listings to really stand out as a listing agent?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I have a deal that's closing tomorrow. And I didn't know it at the time, but I had to go up against like two of the most prolific listing agents in the entire county. And it's hard right now. Like, sellers are interviewing multiple people. There's so few listings that sellers are doing a little bit more work and picking and choosing who they want to hire. And so it's very, very competitive out there. And we all know if you have the listings right now, you control the market. So you want to make sure when you go on those listing appointments that you're prepared to separate yourself from the competition.
Did you win the listing?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. And against two of my best friends, although apparently they interviewed one of them after they had already selected me, but they just still interviewed her. So she's like, that was cool that I got to interview after you already had it signed. But
she got her reps in.
But at least I could say she interviewed for it, even though I already had it, still interviewed.
All right. So first I want to talk about how do we find these listings?
Yeah.
And then once we find them, how do we win them? How do we go on those listing appointments against other heavy hitters, and how do we win them?
Yeah, for sure. So
actually, before we do that, why don't you introduce us and then we'll go right into it.
Cool. Well, welcome to the Whissel Way podcast. My name is Kyle Whissel, your host with Whissel Realty Group and eXp Realty in San Diego.
And I'm Bryan Cochi, Director of Marketing here at Whissel Realty Group.
The goal of the show is to give you the tools, techniques, and tactics to go out there and crush it in your business. The way that we like to do that is to answer the questions that you have for us. You can always ask us questions. We love your questions. We always want new questions so we can answer them here on the show. You can go to thewhisselway.com. You can also subscribe to the podcast and YouTube channel, join our email newsletter or private Facebook group where we share a lot of tips and tricks, and get dialed in on our referral list for all those people that are leaving California at thewhisselway.com.
Great. So how do we find them? How do we find these listings? Let's get into it.
I mean, how to find the listings and how to separate yourself. These are two totally different topics. So I want to assume that you already have a listing appointment. I want to go from that point. There's how to get listings. There's a million different ways, but I want to talk about, like, let's assume you actually got the appointment. I want to talk about, like, from that point forward. I tried to throw him for a loop, and
he's like, no, we're going the way I want to do.
We have a podcast that's 30 minents or less, so we can only focus on one aspect of this. So a few things. One, the appointment starts before the appointment happens. I'm going to say that again because that's a little bit of a unique take. The appointment starts before the appointment happens. And so from the moment you set the appointment, in my opinion, the appointment has then begun from that point forward. Because what you do from the moment you hang up that phone after setting the appointment, in my opinion, that's when the appointment starts.
What if we say that's when the interview starts?
I think the appointment's already started because everything that you do from that point forward is going to determine the end results of that appointment. Sure. So, I mean, we can argue semantics, but I believe that the appointment starts as soon as it's set, right? You hang up the phone, appointment starts. So what are you doing once you hang that phone up with that client? And I think that's where you've got to have a proven process in place, because here's what most of your competition is doing. All right, cool, Bryan, I'll see you Friday at 3:00. And that's it. And then the next time there's any action is when I knock on the door Friday around 3:00. We won't even say 3:00. We'll say around 3:00 because Lord knows realtors aren't showing up on time more often than not. So that's just the next thing. Appointment set, show up around the scheduled appointment time. That's what your competition's doing. So you have a huge opportunity to set yourself apart, right? If we're talking about how do you separate yourself apart to win listings, it's before you even show up. Most people are thinking about answering this question is like, what am I going to do at the appointment? It's what did you do before you showed up to the appointment that I think is where you can already have such a huge head start. It's literally like being in a foot race in the 100-meter dash, but you're starting 50 meters down the track already. Like, you have that ability to do that So you could let your competition sit in the starting blocks. You could get a good 50-yard head start on them and make your life a whole lot easier. So what are you doing from the point that you set that? So we're all about automations and systems. We love that stuff. So the second one of our agents sets an appointment, they're going to go log the appointment in the and follow up us. We have a form that we fill out. We partnered with our friends over at Interface. They set up these really cool forms we fill out. And as soon as that form is completed, all kinds of automations and stuff are happening. One, most importantly, it is getting put into your calendar as the agent. Then it's also inviting the client to that appointment. I think that alone, if you do nothing else, that one step will significantly increase the show rate on your appointments. Just putting it in your calendar and your client's calendar.
That way you'll have 100% show rate of your own listings.
Let's hope so. I no-showed one of mine because it screwed up and there was some weird thing happened and it didn't go in my calendar. And the client was like, "Hey, you on your way?" I was like, "Where?" "Our appointment." "Why isn't it in my calendar?" So sometimes tech can glitch. So double check your automations. So I think you first got to just have a calendar event that's created. Clients got to get invited. That's a really good starting point. I'm a big fan. I like to send a video after I get off the phone with a client. Even though I literally just hung up with a client, I like to send them a video and I just want to recap the conversation. So a video that I would send would go something along these lines. "Hey, Brian, it's Kyle. Really appreciated the conversation with you today. Wanted to shoot this video so you have a face to put with the name. I'm really excited to see you Friday at 3 o'clock. I look forward to meeting with you and Victoria and putting that plan together so you and the kids can move to that cat farm in Missouri. Like, can't wait to see you Friday at 3 o'clock. Like, that's what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to tie in you, if I got your significant other's name, your kids, your pets, any little detail, I'm going to tie that in. And then I'm going to tie into your motivation. And I'm sending that via video. Because sometimes you've already met these people and they know who you are. But there's a lot of these, if you're calling expireds, FSBOs, internet leads, like they've never seen you before. They don't know what you look like. You're just a name and a voice, but let's put a face with that. And so sending that video, one, puts a face with a name, and then two, shows you're actually listening on that conversation based on the words that you say in that video.
I have hired quite a few people to work on my house, tree trimmers, landscapers, concrete people. And so I've gotten a lot of bids for different things. Out of all of that I've done, I've only had one person send me a video over text, and it was he was doing a appraisal on my house. What do they call it? It's not a broker.
A BPO. A
BPO. Mm-hmm. And he was like, "Hey, it's," and I was like, as a marketer, I know we're supposed to do video. Like, I know this. But as a consumer, I got it. I was like, this is really cool. Like, it was something that I've never experienced on the other end. The first time I ever experienced, I'm like, this is, by the time he got there, I already knew him. Like, we were homies and I felt connected, which is what we say over and over and over again. But when you experience it, you go, this is real. Like, this really created a connection with this guy that I feel like we weren't strangers when he showed up, which was phenomenal, especially when you have kids or family and some stranger's going to come and say, "Hey, can I come over to your house and walk through your bedroom?" And like, you want to be a little more comfortable with them. And sending that video, which takes 33 seconds on a text, you hit send or whatever, it makes a huge impact, even from someone who we send out tons of videos. Now, I got it as a consumer. I go, this made it.
You remember that person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the video's huge. I like having that go out shortly after the conversation. I'm going in, I'm logging my notes first because I want to get everything out of my head into the system, into the CRM. I think that's super important. The quicker you update your CRM after an appointment or setting an appointment after a phone call, whatever, the quicker you update it, the more data you're going to get in. And the more data you have, that's going to equip you better to separate yourself from the competition because you're going to show up to the appointment and you're going to remember everything. And you're going to be a big step ahead of the competition. The next thing that we really like to do is utilize a system called HighNote, HIGHNOTE. HighNote, our friends over there, Mark and them, they built a really, really cool system that allows us to send our pre-listing package in a very clean and easy to digest manner. So our pre-listing package, if we're meeting with a seller, it's going to have some information about meet the team. It's going to have some info about reviews, what's happening in the market, a CMA, like things along what some of the unique things we do, floor plans, 3D tours, some of those types of things. But it allows us to get some information about who we are and what makes us different in front of the client before the appointment ever happens. And so it's just a simple link that you generate. You go in, you build this little presentation. It's kind of like a PowerPoint, but in a much cleaner, easier to digest version. And it just gives you a link that you send to the client. And so we send that out to the client and say, hey, Bryan, I'm super excited to meet with you Friday at 3:00. Click the link below. I have some information I'd like for you to review before our appointment Friday. So I send that out to the client in advance of the appointment. Obviously, today we're recording, it's Monday. So if I send that to you Monday, the appointment's Friday, that's good. It's plenty of time for you to digest it. Now, here's what's really cool is that High Note is then, when Bryan clicks on that link, it's going to notify me, one, that he clicked it. Then two, it's going to give me some analytics and tell me, what did Bryan click on once he opened it? Did he look at the part about our reviews? Did he look at the part about our team? Did he just go into the numbers, the market stats, the CMA? Like, what did Bryan click on? How long did he hang on each of those things that he clicked? Like, it's going to be a lot of really good intelligence so I can understand better about what type of person Bryan is, to where if all Bryan clicks on is the market stats and the CMA, I've got somebody who's analytical. If he doesn't click on anything about the people or the team or the reviews or any of that, he probably doesn't care about that. He's about the numbers. He's a numbers guy. So that's going to help me position my presentation properly when I meet with him, that I need to make sure I know my numbers because that's important to Bryan. So it's going to give you some really good intel. Here's what the system will also do is it will tell you if Bryan doesn't click on the link. So I'll get a notification the next day. It'll say, hey, Bryan hasn't opened your link yet. Oh, that's pretty good information, right? Because if I don't know this, I'm going to assume you clicked it, right? Mm-hmm. But now I know you didn't. It gives me another opportunity to follow up with the seller. Say, hey, Bryan, I just want to make sure you got the information down below, the link down below. It's really important for you to review that prior to our meeting. It's just going to go over a few things so that when we get together, we can jump in and talk about your home and exactly how we're going to get you out there to your cat farm in Missouri. Like, it's going to help if I know if you opened it or not.
Now, you mentioned you email it. And you said you followed up. So that's exactly where I was going, is maybe email is not a great solution for your client. So sending it via text or Facebook Messenger or LinkedIn message or Slack, like however they're connected with you, send them to it that way.
Yep.
Cool.
So I'm going to have that go out to the client. Then I like to send a text message the morning of the appointment. Like if people are anything like me, we're forgetful, or sometimes we just have a whole lot of stuff going on. Life gets the best of you. So it's nice to have something go out the day of, and our system actually does this automatically now, which is great. So the team built automations, but it's just something that says, hey, Bryan, just confirming our appointment today at 3:00. I look forward to seeing you then. Simple, like nothing crazy. And it's not like, hey, I want to make sure we're still on. Like, no, you're just giving people an out. It's just confirming, I look forward to seeing you then. And having that day of or morning of a text message go out is great. And again, we built it out in Follow Up Boss through interface. Like, that just all happens automatically.
Before you move forward with what's happening the morning of, there's a piece that we're missing here that I think is really helpful. And we do a lot of remarketing. So one, we utilize Ylopo and they remarket for our buyer leads. If they looked at this house, this house, this house, it'll show them other houses that worked with it. Cool. But we're talking about sellers here. That doesn't matter. What we do is, for certain stages of our database, we'll show different things. So if the lead came in, maybe it was a past client or a Sphere lead, and Kyle has them staged appropriately, cool, they're seeing things here and there. But once he calls them, sets the appointment, the automation automatically turns them to hot. Automatically now they're getting flooded with reviews about Whissel Realty Group. They're getting flooded with some of our unique processes that we're going to share with them at the listing appointment, that once we bring it up, it's not the first time they hear it. They go, oh, I've seen this before. Or, oh, I've heard about this. Or we're reinforcing their decision that this was a good idea to make this appointment, because now they're saying, it's one of those things where, like, now I see you everywhere. And you're like, yeah, that's cognitive bias. Once you buy a white car, you see white car. No, that's on purpose. We are sending you ads on purpose to reinforce that the decision you made was a good one. And so that way you don't have to say, let's look at my reviews. They've already seen your reviews. We have, I think, 35 different reviews going through with some with video, some with text, constantly hitting these people. And what's really cool is Kyle doesn't have to say, okay, now let me add that person to the remarketing. No, we utilize Whitly.
Witly.
Yes, Witly, which connects our database with our Facebook custom audience. and I'm getting a little nerdy here, but all you need to know is once you make a change in your database, it'll automatically update your Facebook. And so the ads that are running to those audiences will now be updated as soon as people move in your database.
Our vendors are going to love us after this episode.
I'm literally writing people down and circling them. And I'm like, we got to hit up Whitley. We got to hit up High Note.
So just so you guys know, we'll never plug anything if we don't actually use it. So I know there's a lot of other people that have podcasts that are just plugging whoever's paying them. Like every company we ever talk about are ones we actually use. So just to throw that out there. Cool. Yeah. So the retargeting also, that helps position us as an authority before we ever go out there. Another thing, if it's a luxury property, which for us, we define that as $2.5 million or higher, or double the median price for the zip code. Because in some areas, a $1.5 million home is a luxury home in some areas. So obviously you'll adapt that to your market, but we consider anything that's double the median price, we are considering that to be luxury. So in those scenarios, we actually have physical booklets that we've had designed. Very professional, high-end, like custom embossed covers and all this stuff. So there's an actual physical book that gets delivered to the seller in advance of the appointment. So it's going to supplement the digital marketing with some physical marketing as well, because on the higher end stuff, you just kind of become accustomed to that. Like first time I bought a luxury car, I bought like a Lincoln, and I literally got this like really nice box with the key in it. And it was just something different, right? You go to every other dealership and you buy the car and they literally give you like the key with like their tag on it that has like the stock number.
Yeah.
Or like
that's what happened when I bought my brand new Ford Fiesta. That's pretty luxury to me.
Lincoln, it was like in this really nice, acrylic box. You open it with velvet. Like it was a thing, right? Like it turned
like
it into an
box.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just bought some new Vuori shoes, and like the box it comes in is just different than any other shoe box I've ever opened. Like you're positioning yourself to be different than the competition. So
Payless doesn't have that kind of box, but that's cool.
Is Payless still around?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I shopped them as they were closing. I bought like 9 pairs of kids' shoes. It was phenomenal. Okay, so remarketing, text messages the morning of.
Yep. And then show up on time. Like
show up to the house at 3:00.
My opinion, I like to get, especially on listing appointments, I like to get there, really any appointment, 15 minutes early. I plan for the inevitable, which is if I set it where I'm going to get there exactly at 3:00 for a 3:00 appointment, like something's going to happen, right? Like there's going to be an accident, a road's going to be closed, like there's construction. If I don't drive cars that take fuel anymore, but if I needed fuel, I'm sorry, you shouldn't drive a car that takes fuel. It's stupid. You're wasting a day of your life every year at a freaking fuel station. You need fuel for your vehicle. There's just things that happen every time if you plan it to get there exactly when your appointment's supposed to start. So I want to get there 15 minutes early. If I actually get there 15 minutes early, cool. I got 15 minutes to just review everything one more time. Or I have time to go drive by a comp or two since I got there early. So I'll take advantage of that anytime that I can. I'm a big proponent of listing appointments. If my appointment is at 3:00, I will literally sit there and watch the clock tick down. And the second it hits 3:00, I will knock on your door. Like I want to
Kyle's there in front of the door for 3 minutes, just waiting there. They see you at the Ring doorbell, just like waiting. It's weird.
I will wait, and I will knock exactly at 3. But that's setting the tone for the type of person that you are. And I don't like to show up early because you might not realize this, but your client is like frantically cleaning the house. Not always, because there's some people who couldn't care less, but more often than not, your client is like cleaning the house, preparing, because they feel like they really got to show their house off to you. They're making beds, like putting laundry away, hiding the kids' toys. Like if you show up early, you're catching them in the midst of that. And that's not the way I want to set the tone for the appointment. I want to show up right there, 3:00 on the dot, knock, knock.
Yep. And if you show up, I hate when people show up late. It's funny because before I hosted people at my house, I'd always show up a little early because I got there early. I hate being late. And now as I host people or I host events at my house, people show up 15 minutes early. I'm like, go away. I still got shit to do.
Yeah.
Like, leave me alone. On the flip side, I hate being like, all right, it's 3:00 and I'm sitting there waiting for 20 minutes for people to show up. I'm like, all right, guys, now like I'm prepped, like get here. So the older I get, the more important I find of hitting that on the dot.
Yep.
Cool.
Nail it. So that's, you see, there's a lot, right? Like we haven't even talked about what's happening once we get to the house. Like there's already been so many things that have positioned us 50 yards ahead of the competition before other people think the competition has begun. And so that's all the stuff we like to do in advance. And then as far as like at the appointment, me, as much as I love marketing and data and tech and geeky and out on all this stuff, like it's all about the relationship. Once I'm there, like there's not a set thing that I do at every single appointment. It's not. Everyone is different because I'm going to adapt to the person. I've got to be a chameleon. If they're super talkative, let's get talkative. If they're straight to the point, we're going to get straight to the point. Like I'm going to adapt. I'm going to adapt to the home. I'm going to adapt to the person. I'm going to adapt to the situation. I'm going to adapt to the weather. If it's 120 degrees outside, we're not going to be hanging out outside. If they offer me a beer, we're going to be cracking a beer. Like if they offer me a glass of wine, we're going to be cracking a glass of wine. If they offer me some food, we're going to have some food. Like I'm going to adapt my presentation for that person. And just fun fact, like if somebody offers you something and you say no, you're actually offending them, like straight up. If somebody
for some cultures, not for everyone, but for
more often than not, you're somebody like if it's a glass of water or whatever, that's fine. But if somebody's like, hey, would you like grab a beer? Like they're probably cracking a beer. So let's crack a beer together, right? Or
they don't
whatever.
want to drink alone. They're like, please be my excuse.
I did have to Uber home from an appointment one time because we cracked too many.
But wasn't that one that was just down the street from your house?
It wasn't far from my house. I was not. It would have been a really rough walk. So yeah, I had to Uber home from a listing appointment, but it's fine. So as far as like once you actually sit, let's assume we're sitting down at the table. Like, how do we separate ourselves? Just because I know we're going to get a little tight on time here, so I want to make sure I get this piece in before we wrap today. Is think about, you don't necessarily have to do anything totally different than your competition. But what you can do is position what you do differently. I know that sounds kind of weird, but here's what I mean by that. Is think about what are the things you do on every single one of your listings? What are the 3, 5, 7, 10 things you do on every single time, every listing, no matter what? Give it a name. I got this idea from Dan Beers, one of my business partners. I heard a radio commercial was like, find out about our 5-day blitz. It's like our trademarked 5-day blitz. I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. Like, what does that mean? Who knows? Who cares? But he has the 5-day blitz and he has that trademarked. What does the 5 days mean? It doesn't even matter. That's different. And he trademarked it, so he's the only one who has that. So he inspired me to do something similar. So we have something called a 7-day listing launch, which we have trademarked. So now,
which means you can't use either of these.
You can't use either of them, but you can use them for inspiration. So now if a seller's like, well, what makes you different? How cool does this sound? The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office recognizes our 7-day listing launch as a trademark system. And that's the system that we've utilized to sell over, X homes. For us, it's over 4,000 homes here in San Diego and Riverside County. That sounds really freaking cool. What are the 7 days? Does it really matter? Maybe, but your 7 days, my 7 days, Dan's 5 days, your 10 days, your 3 days, it doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter that much. It's just the fact that you gave it a freaking name. Like, just package it up, call it something. Like I do courses with Darren Hardy. Everything has a name. It's like, oh, are you going to do the business masterclass or the hero's journey or this? Like everything has a name to it. So if you can just package up what it is that you're already doing, but give it a name, instead of saying like, all right, so we're going to do this and we're going to do this, we're going to do this. What if it's like, well, we do the 4-day listing launch blitz marketing plan, like whatever the name is, doesn't matter, but just package it up as something and it becomes something. And it's something that nobody else has. And
again, we're tight on time, but before we end, I want to kind of, or before we go into our Whissel Widget of the Week, we keep saying what you already do. Let's give some ideas of what people are, because I don't want someone to listen to this and go, yeah, I don't know what I do for every listing. Right. Yeah. But we know that they do the same thing, right? So professional photography, right?
Let's sure as hell hope so. But I mean, we'll build like a 5-day plan right now. 1, we're going to get professional photography of your home. 2, we're going to run a social media ad campaign.
Shout out to Ylopo who does it for us.
3, I'm going to activate the listing on the MLS, which it's then going to syndicate out to all of the buyers all around the world who have searches saved, and it's going to be featured on, thousands of different websites. Like, okay, there's another day. Day 4, I'm going to go knock on all the doors in the neighborhood. And day 5, I'm going to do an open house. There you go. There's a 5-day plan. That's that easy. It doesn't have to be that hard. Don't overthink it.
And the other thing that I want to make sure, because we built this, Kyle built this 6 years ago probably. And since then we have tweaked it, because we said, cool, this is a great plan, but it's not something we do on every one. And as our team has grown, as our offerings have grown, we said, look, what can we, so if you're a team leader and you hear this, what can you build for your team that you guys do for them? So like we have our listing management team, we have our media team, we have our runners, we have a lot of things that we say, look, if the agent does nothing, they will still do our 7-day listing launch because we do it all for them. Or if you're an agent, think about, look, there's times where I don't want to do an open house or I don't want to do, build a plan that where you can guarantee that is your base. You'll do it every time. Now you can do more. You can say, oh, this is my 5 days, but you qualify for the 3-day blitz. We can't say that, but right, whatever. The 3 bonus days, which include this, and this. But make sure you have your base of what you always do and always do that.
Yeah. And we have 2 versions of the 7-day. I'm actually rolling the higher level 7-day out tomorrow.
Okay, good. I wrote it down because I didn't know if you remembered that.
Yeah. So we have 2 different versions of it too. There's the baseline version like Brian's talking about that happens on 100% of our listings. But then if I'm going into a higher end listing, it's different. Mm-hmm. Right now there's physical mailers that are going out, which we're maybe not doing that on a $200,000 mobile home. But on a $12 million, beachfront home, we are doing that. So we have 2 different ones that we run with based on the appointment that we're going into. So just because, and it's smart, like if you need a trademark attorney that can help you, we got a guy local here in San Diego who's great. We can connect you with him. He'll get you dialed in. It's not that expensive, maybe like $1,000 or $2. Don't overthink it. It doesn't cost you millions of dollars. But we can connect you. It's smart in how you register. You don't need to register. Here's the 7 days, and here's exactly what we do on each of the 7 days. It's just a 7-day process. So you want to make it so you have some flexibility in the way that you register that. Do you feel like we've answered the question, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We went heavy on the pre-appointment, but again, if you can get to the kitchen table and already be 50 yards ahead of the competition, I'm all for that.
And I mean, with all the stuff that we talked about, I think that gets you a lot farther than 50 yards. I think that gets you, again, it gets to the point of, hey, did you review the stuff I sent you? Hey, did you have any questions?
And the funny thing is you don't even have to ask because High Note's going to tell you what they looked at. So you already know they looked at the CMA and they looked at it for 5 minutes or 15 minutes, or they went back to it 5 times. Like you're going to know that information.
And then you can tailor your presentation to that, to where you spend 90% on the CMA. And, oh yeah, here's my team. Next, here's it. Like you can skip through all this stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so really just get down to the questions and objections and the things that haven't been answered yet.
Yeah, and High Note, I believe they use like a waitlist system to get in. So I have a code to skip the waitlist. If you guys want the code, just DM me on Instagram. I'm at Kyle Whissel, and I'll shoot you over that code to shortcut the little line that they built.
Sweet.
All right, awesome. Before we wrap, what we like to do, actually, no, before that, what we like to do is, if you enjoyed this today, if you got some value out of it, if you are listening on a podcast platform, hook us up with a review. Those reviews mean a lot to us, and getting reviews on podcasts is way harder than I ever thought it would be. So every review means a lot to us, and it's very much appreciated. So if you appreciate the content, if you could write a review, we appreciate you. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button so you can get more of our content. You can also hit the notification bell, and YouTube will notify you whenever we drop a new episode. Also, hit the thumbs up button, let YouTube know you're enjoying it. And if you have questions, you could just throw them in the comment section. So if you want some follow-up questions, you can throw them in there. And Brian and I personally respond to all of those.
Dang it. I know someone's going to say, hey, can you give me a list of this? And I'm like, sometimes those comments, I'm like, oh yeah, it's easy. And sometimes I'm like, I got to find it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, before we wrap, what we like to do is talk about something we call our Whissel Widget of the Week. This is something we utilize in our business. It saves us time, makes us more money, or just helps us have more fun. Go for it, Brian.
So this, I think you've done it before, but as we're getting ready, our La Mesa office, we're doing our grand opening. So by the time this is aired, you probably have missed it. But one of the things we're doing with our office is we're utilizing it for more than just our real estate team, but we're utilizing it for renting it out to community organizations. We're renting it out on Peerspace so people can use it. I think we've got a prom coming up. We did a graduation party. We've got a quinceañera, all sorts of events. And what we have is, instead of having to have someone come and meet them at the office and unlock the door and walk them through all this sort of stuff, we have this device, this tool called Brivio. And what it allows us to do is allows us to unlock and lock the doors automatically from our phones. All of our agents have the pass on their phones. So that way, all they got to do is open it up, tap it to the little fob on the front, so it unlocks the door. But and also we can say, hey, unlock the door every morning at 8:30, lock it every day at 4:30, so that way it's always open during open hours. And like I said, we can lock it and unlock it if you have admin access. So pretty cool if you have a lot of agents in your office and you're looking for easier ways than saying, here's a key, and then they leave. You're like, can I have my key back, please? And then it gets really awkward. Brivio or Brivio Pass is what we use.
Cool. The one I have is also ties into security. My dad got one of his social media accounts hacked over the weekend. It's like, Dad, you can't click on those links. You know, old people do that stuff. My dad being no different. So one of the things that I think is really important for a lot of people is to make sure there's something that's called two-factor authentication. Pretty much anything today, you should have two-factor authentication. What that means is it's not going to allow somebody, even if somebody gets your password to something, it's still not going to give them access to your account. Two-factor means it's going to verify you in two different ways. And so you want to make sure you're setting up two-factor authentication, especially on your banking accounts, your email accounts, because your email account is the path to everything, and your social media accounts. Like if nothing else, those three, anything financially related, your email more than anything, and your social media accounts. I think those are probably the three if you're going to focus. You want to set up two-factor authentication on every single one of those. That way, and Bryan has to do it, right? And we have VAs in the Philippines. Like if they need to log in, it's going to notify, hey, Kyle, you're trying to log in. Here's your code. And what's going to happen is I'm either going to be like, somebody's trying to hack me, or I'll make sure that I know when somebody's trying to get into my account. So that two-factor is really, really valuable. So I just want to throw that out there, having my dad recently getting hacked. I've seen a couple other people recently. Like, make sure you turn that on. Anything financially related, social media, or your email account, make sure that you turn on two-factor authentication.
I don't know if it's on my email, but it's going to be.
Your email is the most important one.
Yeah,
literally, your email is the gateway to everything. Mm-hmm. So people can, once they have your email, they can get into pretty much everything else. So, and that your email, you should be changing your password. Some of these things now make you change it like every 90 days, or a good habit to get into is like, I know it's cheesy AF, but like we always post like, hey, it's time to set your clocks back. Like they say that you should change the batteries in your like alarms, your smoke alarm and your carbon monoxide alarms and stuff. Like you should do that every 6 months when you adjust your clocks. Like another good thing is like, hey, every 6 months, update your passwords to all those key accounts as well.
I've got a lot of shit to do now. I've got to replace batteries, apparently. I just take them out when they beep and we're good.
every 6 months, you should do that.
Cool.
Awesome, guys. Well, hopefully you got a lot of value out of the show today. Really appreciate you tuning in. Again, I'm Kyle Whissel with eXp Realty.
I'm Bryan Kochi.
We'll see you next time. Wait. Before you leave, I want to share some more tips and tricks that we're using in our business to take it to that next level. Just click right here. And don't forget to subscribe. Click right here.